thought I lost an intake manifold, and I ordered one from my buddy Joey. 418404. It's, you know, the carburetor flange, which our exhaust manifold is thinner. I think the thinner one is the fuel injected one. Don't quote me on that. If I'm wrong, I'll correct myself here. But there are two different flange thicknesses, and all three of the manifolds, the two on those cars and this one here, are all the same part number, but they do vary a little bit between the PV544s and the P1800s. They have different throttle attachments and vacuum ports. I believe this one would probably be the brake booster. That's the PCV, and then the oil cap goes right into the air filters at the front side of the carburetor. Thanks, Joe. Keep on rocking, dude. Waiting on other things to get either shipped over here or parts to be made by Soren. Like, I can't quite yet do the rear axle on Bruce since I've only got 2 jack stands. I'm using that as a good excuse not to do the rear axle on Bruce today and give my hands a bit of a rest. After about 12 days, they're tired. So I'm going to continue today on the trunk in Bruce. I've already got the gas tank in, and then the remaining things to do are there's some panels that go on the sides, including this top one here, after you route the wire for the taillights, which is the white one. I'll also mount the taillight handle, which is the early style. Let me show you here. We had that trunk lid custom cut to fit the early style taillights because we are building a 62. And there it is. You can't find these new, so it's got pitting all around it, and it will have to be replaced at some point, but that's that there. And this is the later style latch that we're all familiar with, and then the early style, which has this gasket that looks a lot like Shrek. This gasket cannot be found either. This one's been custom cut. But we do have a new key for the latch, and if all goes well, we should have a working latch by the end of today. These are just some other miscellaneous pieces that you cannot find. The lenses for that taillight, good luck. The little bulb holders, you can see that this one's been siliconed into place. That's not ideal. A good candidate for zinc restoration, however. I think that time period's passed because we already had our one batch of zinc parts, and I neglected to put some of these in there. Here's the rear latch, 658822. I hope this one works with the early style as well. I'm hopeful. The rubber for this piece is 660555. These little guys actually go on the dashboard of all places. These are for the doors, the driver and passenger side doors. Each door has a pad that follows the line of the dashboard along the corners, and they're actually really cool pieces. Something I need to drill holes for later, but I'm excited to have them, and I just have them here on the staging table. Quick side note, and this will come up later again, overdrive cables are that much longer than non-overdrive cables, and you need it because the Genevieve right now has a non-overdrive cable, and it's stretched a little too tight, so we're going to put in an overdrive cable. It has a very interesting end on it. This is a quick way to identify them at the transmission. It's got these like slots on it versus the other style being one like that or looking more like this on both ends. But at the gauge cluster, they both have the same ending. Lots of work to be continued, and what's frustrating me the most about Bruce right now is that things are halfway and then you hit a dead end, and I'm waiting on parts, I'm waiting on other people's services, so I move on to something else, and then I hit another dead end as I wait for more parts. Like the front and rear main seals, VP Auto Parts order has not arrived yet, so the engine is sitting there patiently awaiting the rest of its assembly. It's difficult to know every single component you're going to need ahead of time. And I did spend days and days on assembling all those lists and inventorying what we have versus what we need, but things weren't really ideal. In addition to that, some things just happened to not work out. Like when I placed my order for radiator cap gaskets. I ordered the wrong radiator cap gasket because, well, there's two styles between the B20 and the B18, and I assumed, hey, this is a B20 engine with an expansion tank, so let me get the B20 type expansion tank cap. Turns out it's different than the B18 expansion tank. Oh, and that's what actually happened to be in the car. So there's a lot of those year-to-year differences that have really held me up. The hardest parts, I think, are already over, and that would be, the dashboard wiring. And then I also got a call from my upholsterer today saying they finally assembled all of my pieces for the Volvo, so I can go and pick those up. Yay. Only trouble is we don't have the side panels yet. They were in too bad of a shape to remake, and we need to essentially purchase them online and have a good set reupholstered. All right, all that chatter, let's get back to the trunk. Last month I worked with a lot of Toto, and this month it's all Pink Floyd, baby.
Each workday was 13 hours, and that's also the same length of time as the Pink Floyd All Songs playlist on my Spotify. How beautiful and in desperate need of replacement are these pieces. Wow. I just love the look. When installing the gasket with the handle, the edges of it should tuck over. Sometimes you get lucky, but usually there's a few spots that have been clamped on top of. So you just go in through with something, preferably like a plastic tool, because if a pig slips and you're not surgically careful with it, he'll scratch. But just go through and get those edges. Now, when I put in the new rear lights, I ended up using like a generic socket. It was a makeshift thing because the original sockets were kind of destroyed. And hey, look, a wild Soren has appeared. So I'll finish the trunk later. I've got to do the trunk seal and then adjustment on the latch and all that stuff. But for now, we had our FedEx package arrive and I can get back to work. The FedEx delivery guy was like, hey, it's a part, isn't it? And I was like, you've got no idea. You can finally get back to work on the engine. Woo! This is just me making you look at how strong my muscles were back when gyms were open and we weren't stuck indoors. So I like having VP Auto Parts deliveries. It's like a very expensive Christmas, and I always really enjoy laying out everything. And it's time to finally start working on the head, which is still taped up from when I painted it. See, tape rings, much like this little guy, just the cone of tape, insert it into these holes, and that's how you prevent paint from getting down where it shouldn't. Pretty simple, right? 13 hours, Pink Floyd. Every day, and I'm talking all their music. I'd totally forgotten that my head for Bruce has double valve springs in it. Huh. How about that? Now in a minute I'll tell you what it is, but see if you can spot what's wrong about all these parts here. Okay, here's everything on our menu today. The new parts I was waiting on, the head bolts, the thermostat, front and rear main seal, the thicker valve cover gasket. This is a 3mm gasket for the aluminum valve covers because they get real close to butting up against these springs if they don't have that little bit of space. And apparently now I'm short 2 lifters. This is deeply disconcerting because my box there that was the engine parts, it's empty now because all the engine parts are here and in the cars. All right, that's the bad news. The good news is at least I have the front main seal and the rear main seal. And what I'm gonna do, it's gonna be weird, but I'm putting the engine in with the trans with no head. It'll be fun because the head's the easy thing to bolt on. There's nothing really off to the sides beside the manifolds, and I'm not able to order my exhaust headers until next week. So either way, it would be going in without those manifolds. So I may as well just do it without the head. It's that big. That's totally doable. That's much better of an option than not being able to do anything. So I'm really glad for VP Auto Parts existing. All right, I gotta send him an email and get these lifters. Rummage through the bin of parts we got from Bruce because Bruce had a Weber carburetor. Thankfully, the SU linkage is still there because these little guys are like expensive pieces. And I'll clean them up as best as I can, maybe paint them black, put them on the car. And Soren has saved the day by bringing me some goodies that my car isn't big enough to fit. Today, it's almost 1 year after actually recording some of this footage, 7 months of being in LA, and watching these videos really makes me miss my buddy. I hope he's doing well. I mean, we keep in touch, so there's that. He brought back the seats from the upholstery shop for Bruce, and now it's time to get back to the engine installation of the seals. For some reason, both front main seals are good on both engines, on both cars, but the rear main seals just are leaking terribly on both Bruce and Genevieve. So I don't know what I did incorrectly here, but I do need to pull out both transmissions here in the summer of 2020. And I need to rebuild those, which will give me access to the rear main seal. It's just the neoprene, I think. Hopefully I don't have to pull off the entire casing. But the rest of the engine assembly, pretty straightforward. Just a thin dab of silicone on either side of the oil pan gasket. Tighten all these brand new bolts in sequence. Attach the motor mounts in the correct position. Chain up and ready to go in place where the engine is. The flywheel installation, I have not had any of the flywheels on any of these Volvos professionally resurfaced like I would with the brake rotors. And it's never been an issue. They're such lightweight cars and the flywheels just generally need a good cleaning. They don't show a lot of signs of wear and tear. And even putting in the M41 inside the bell housing, it's never an issue. These cars are rarely a headache with just how small everything is. Now you gotta keep in mind, I'm not restoring this transmission right now because it needs to be rebuilt.
And all I need to do is get the car drivable so I can get it up on the trailer, over to California, and rebuild it over there. Because the transmission can be dropped and removed without this thing, we're doing all the work that requires this thing here, now, and we won't need an engine hoist when we're out there. That's the good news. Let's see if I can do this with the nose in place. Might be a bad idea. Might be my best idea.
My intention with Bruce was to not remove the nose like I had to on Genevieve to put the engine in, because that would make it a lot harder to get it aligned perfectly the same way that the body shop got it put in. Pretty much perfectly. So I opted in for taking advantage of the fact that my hood hinges are a little bit bent and the hood opens way too much. The engine has no head, so the overall package is a little bit shorter. And I made essentially a slip and slide out of blankets and towels.
Well, gentlemen, it's not very glamorous. And the bugs are in. I mean, the car's halfway out the garage, so I can have the space to do everything, but trying to keep every surface protected. 2 layers. Oh, Stevie Wonder.
Shout out to Dr. Cornell West for recommending that song. I loved it ever since I discovered it through him. And now on to the fun part where everything gets slowly lifted up and slowly put back in. And you know what? It worked out pretty good. Here's some music.